John Annecy says, Mehran, what do you think the best solution for breaking OCD rituals? Just not do them even though it creates brain discomfort? Absolutely. You know, for instance, if I don't do something certain number of times, I think something bad will happen. Yeah. How do I stop that? It sounds so stupid. Yeah, it does. But I'm gonna, it's like no matter what I say, if you don't do it, you won't see the result. You don't see what I'm talking about. So you got to be committed to do that. Like when you have a obsession, that let's say you got to wash your hands so many times, then the compulsion would be to wash your hands. And if you don't, you'll have anxiety. Now, you deal with the anxiety with anxiety in this case. In other words, you destroy the anxiety that gives you from not doing the compulsion with more anxiety. The anxiety is going to dissolve that anxiety. How do I mean? You think you touch something that is dirty, which in fact we all know we are a bit crazy and it's not dirty. We just think it is. Now we don't go why, we just do that. Human brain is got craziness and it's in every human being. We end up having OCD one way or another if we haven't already experienced it. And everybody in the world does have intrusive thoughts. And then it lingers and so on. We've talked about that before. But in this particular case, so you have an obsession to wash your hands because you think you touched something that was dirty, which is not, but you think it is. You believed it with no evidence. You just believed it. That's how fucked up we are. But nevertheless, then now you got to do the compulsion. And you can't wait till you get to some washroom somewhere, some faucet somewhere, get soap and wash your hands. Why? That's the compulsion. Yeah. And if you don't do it, you kind of hold your hand somewhere, do whatever trick you think just to fool yourself that I get it, I should watch it through that until you get that compulsion done, washing your hand done, and it's not going to be one time, 2 or 3 times you want to wash it, if not more. That compulsion, until you do it, you have an anxiety. I got to do this. And if I don't do it, something bad will happen. Or if it's touching something 5 times, this light switch, you got to turn it off and on 5 times, or 3 times, or 10 times, or maybe one more time. It didn't feel right. I got to do it again. These are glitches. There's no evidence. If that was the case, then when they want to send a rocket to the moon and somebody happens to think, maybe I should do it 10 times with this particular switch. You do that 10 times, the thing might blow up. So then scientific things, they won't go for the OCD bullshit because they know it can have dangerous ramifications. They just don't believe that there's any extraterrestrial or any deity or any force out there that if you don't do this, some wrong will go with the engine of the rocket. They don't think that way because it's all about calculations. And if you put that emotion and glitches out, the computer doesn't have an OCD. And computer is like brain. It does calculations and process of figuring things out. And in that process, there's no place for OCD, for doing it a few times. And if I don't do it, if I don't round up this calculation that is very precise and very necessary, or if I don't turn the 5 to 6, then something bad will happen. They don't think that way. The computer doesn't think that way. It says it has to be 5. You turn it into 6 because you think, it's an OCD. I got to turn it to 6. Or I got to touch this button one more time. Well, you do one more time, there's more fuel going to go in there. It's going to be sparking and just blowing everything up. You don't do OCD shit. Computer doesn't do that because it's aware of the consequences. It's programmed in order to be precise and perfect, not to do anything other than what's necessary. And none of the OCD stuff that we did or we do or some people still do are necessary at all. It's just a mental glitch. But let's say somehow you understand all that, but you still do it. So the compulsion, until you do it, it gives you anxiety. Now, what you need to do is to say, look, I'm bigger than OCD. I'm bigger than the anxiety. I know I'm not going to die if I don't touch this thing the 5th time. I have the compulsion to touch it and turn the light on and off one more time. And if I don't, things are not really glitched on. But you got to say, I understand what my brain wants me to do, but I make the choice and I make the decision because the brain is stupid, is malfunctioning. And with the same malfunctioning brain is trying to convince me that it's necessary that I should touch it one more time. But I know it's malfunctioning. The malfunctioning brain is reasoning this. So I'm not going to listen to it. I'm going to rise above it and say, not going to touch that switch. I'm not going to wash my hand one more time. And that's going to itself, because you made that decision, it now knows that the compulsion is not coming. The drug is not coming. So I'm not going to get the dopamine secreted. I'm not going to feel good because I've complied with the compulsion that is needed after obsession shows up. And knowing that gives you more anxiety. So you were anxious until you do the compulsion. Now you've decided not to do the compulsion. There'll be more anxiety. So the anxiety goes up. Anxiety level goes up and you hang around. And so something bad is going to happen. I got to make sure, because OCD is making sure disease, doubting disease. So you doubt anything. I got to touch the wood, this wall a few times because it's sunny. I want to go play soccer. And if I don't do it, maybe it's going to be rainy. None of that shit happens. All you have to do is just don't do it and see if it's going to turn out rainy or not. Just don't touch it and see if something bad will happen or not. Because if that is correct, if something bad does happen if you don't do the compulsion, then the reverse of it should be correct as well. Which means if something good you want to happen, by touching something several times, the good thing should happen. Like let's say you want to have $1 million in the bank. So how many times should we touch touch the wall in order to get that happening? Because if I don't do it, something bad will happen. That's what you think, right? Which means maybe the bank will freeze my account. Isn't that something bad about your banking? Or what about health? Or if I don't do that, maybe something happened to my father or to someone that you love. So if that's the case, that it has such a power, that touching the wall has such a magical power that can actually harm something that otherwise it would be healthy, and by me touching that wall one more time, it actually magically protects my parents, then if they have a cold or they have some kind of an illness, if I use the same power, they should also be cured. But they don't, do they? Because I did what I should do to stop the bad thing happening. So if I do it more, maybe the good thing will happen if I change my intention. But you know that none of that actually happens. So the best thing is, if you think something bad is going to happen, just take your head out of your ass, be more detail-oriented that day, more careful about what you're doing, and you will see nothing happen that day. Nothing whatsoever. And you didn't touch that extra touch. So you can slowly prove to yourself that this touching business is nonsense. And logically, you will begin to understand, okay, if it's not happening, what am I doing it for then? Then there's a glitch in the brain. And I'm going to remedy that. By how? By reconditioning myself to the fact that I don't need to do the compulsion. How? Well, if I'm supposed to touch this 5 times, today I'm going to touch it 4 times. I'm going to see if something bad will happen. Nothing. Tomorrow I'll touch it 3 times. Nothing. Then I touch it 2 times. Then after a while, I just touch it once and say that's enough, because nothing bad can be connected to this, me touching this or not. So when you wait a while and compulsion goes up and you still don't do it and you still don't do it and time passes and then your mind gets busy with the other things you actually forget. Then you start thinking, oh, has it not happened to you that sometimes you actually sit down and say, I don't think I touched that wall that I was supposed to touch in order to work against something bad happening. I know I didn't touch it, but nothing bad happened either. So what should I do now? Go touch it? Like you don't remember it. When you don't remember that you touched it or not, when you don't remember that you should be touching it so nothing bad happens, when that memory, that time that you're worried about this, that you should do it, passes and you get busy with other things, you no longer are worried about something bad happened. Why? Because you're not even remembering that you should have. You should have performed that compulsion. So it's only important as long as you remember you're thinking about that I should do the compulsion. Once you no longer remember about that mode of fear and anxiety that passes that time span, you no longer think it's necessary for you to do it. So if you can train yourself that when you think you got to do the compulsion, just wait until a little bit more time passes, another minute or two, or 3 or 4 minutes, you may actually forget about the fact that you want it and you thought it's important, necessary for you to touch that wall 5 more times. And when you begin to, it'll become apparent to you that none of that is really related to something good or bad happen. That will help you to logically fix your brain. And then on top of it, when you haven't done the compulsion for a while, and then you say, okay, a few minutes passed and my anxiety level gone up, but I didn't die. I'm going to have my tea, I'm going to do my other things, and time passes and I no longer feel I should be doing it. Tomorrow, when you feel like you got to touch that thing and the compulsion shows up, you remember that yesterday I actually resisted the compulsion for 5 minutes. I can do it. Let's see if I can do 10 minutes today. And then within these times that you're giving it the resting period, waiting period, you forget about doing it. And after a while, it becomes reconditioning, that you actually don't think you really have to do this, because in a few moments you won't think it's necessary. Only that particular moment, at the height of it, you think you should do it. If you pass that moment that you think you really have to do it and you resist it, you will not think that you have to do it. So you work on this and you condition yourself. Later compulsion, anxiety is high, but I still don't do it. And it takes longer for me to do the compulsion, longer I wait and I do the compulsion. And then eventually I don't think I need to do the compulsion because enough time has passed. I don't even remember why I wanted to do what I wanted to do. That's how you rewire yourself, recondition yourself for these not doing the compulsions. That is somehow you can approach it for these sort of things.